CLI and a cross-platform IDE for C and C++. Download now.
So yeah, I'm glad to be at a conference by programmers for programmers because well, I have worked as a CTO and as an agile coach before. But I've been working a lot as a programmer on vintage software. So software that it's not legacy software, it might have tests, but nobody dares to touch it. Jazz Higgins is in another room and Chris Altud, I've done projects like that with them as well. So the last year I was trying to, as a developer, even hired directly by senior management to do something difficult. As Alan said, if you do systems thinking, which I do, I can't help myself, you see things around you, but a lot of people don't see the same things. So two things that I found useful for myself and my co-conspirator in this is thinking of failure demand and looking at bottlenecks. So I'm going to try and explain this to you in the next 45 minutes. So this is a one-off presentation created just for this case. I was editing my slides, but I started a couple of months ago. This is it's interesting to explain. So why am I doing this? Well, I blame Kevlin Henny. I have a Kevlin in the background. If you're not familiar with the ACCU and Kevlin Henny, people put up screenshots of failures, formerly on Twitter, now on Mastodon. So this was me doing a presentation and the TV going, CMOS checksum bad. So thanks to Kevlin, I'm here. So why am I talking about failure demand in particular and bottlenecks as a tool? Because service sucks and software now contributes to that. I got this message this morning from O2. I'm trying to get my Apple Watch on O2. You didn't respond to our messages, so your case has been closed. That was after 4 phone calls of 45 minutes. I called Apple as well. So yeah, and I asked them to contact me by email, which they didn't do. They have called me, but their line was so bad that I could see it was their number, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. So yeah, there's a bunch of software involved in this, and I have no service. But I also make software that contributes to this. So I want to explain this to colleagues. Eventually, after thinking of this talk, I found out I did not have to do this explicitly, but you take time. But still, having this mental model helps. Oh, yeah, so same as Alan said before with systems thinking, once you see failure demand, you cannot unsee it, which was another reason I was editing my slides, because there's some fresh photos in here. So yeah, welcome to my lightning talk. These are the key takeaways. Failure demand is demand caused by mistakes or omissions. So things that we didn't do or forgot to do, and as a cause of that, we or someone in our organization is doing work. So it might be, say, the ops people who set up a build pipeline that fails for reasons that are unrelated to my code, and I'm not allowed to edit the build pipeline, which I could. Or the poor people in the call center who are answering my calls because the service I want isn't working. The 5 focusing steps that you can use to address bottlenecks are actually zero-based. So a reason for me to do this is sort of go out and find back the literature. So Pascal van Kouwenberg's blog post, which is in the further reading thing, starts at step 0. Step 0 is define the problem and find out what value we are trying to deliver. So what are we trying to do actually? And the other 5 steps are the improvement steps. And bottlenecks are just evidence of the problem. Small C change, we're talking about big A and small A. Small C change works. So change it in the small as a developer works, but you have to be very patient. And so doing these kinds of things can help you make change. The reason I wanted to talk about bottlenecks is I was working on a system, a microservice that was a bottleneck, and people got like, oh, let's put in a bigger server. Let's be on the bigger database. Well, maybe, but let's see if that's necessary. Check step back before spending money on anything and consider the wider context. Spend wisely. So now we can go into some details. About me, I live in the cloud and in Bath, 15 minutes from here. I like ACCU's title slides with the dark skies picture. I found out by driving around Bath at night that we have dark sky areas around. And if you want really, really dark skies, go to Hadrian's Wall, because that's part of the biggest, in the middle of the biggest dark sky area of Europe. And there's a magnificent observatory in the middle of the woods, which is great. My company is Living Software, because software changes and I do too. I said this already. I do systems thinking and do systems doing. For me, it's mostly intuition support. So I'm introducing some tools, but trust your intuition and find ways that you can help you explain things. Talk outline, I'll talk about circles of influence because that came up several times while doing the reading. Failure demand, bottlenecks. And I have some examples of 5+1 focusing steps. Now that might work. Yeah, this one's once again Pascal van Kouwenberg's fault. So we have circles of control, influence, and concern. Are you familiar with this? Who is not familiar with this? Okay. So the circle of control is what you can do directly. So say if I'm working as a developer, I have control, hopefully, over my development machine and over the code that I write today. I have influence on, say, my product owner, the person I'm pair programming with, and I have concerns about how, in this case, the whole company is working and was working for a retailer, whether we actually can sell things so that we can make money. Is that clear? Okay. So as a, I think Giovanni mentioned that if as a director of engineering, my scope of control and influence is much bigger. Hopefully, if people listen to me, I can control lots of things. I have a lot of influence, but my concerns might also be bigger. The reason I mentioned this, I innocently started to think, okay, this failure demand and this bottleneck stuff goes together well. But the 5 focusing steps from a theory of constraints that help you with bottlenecks are working in the small. So you take a small thing, and you can do that, say, a developer, and you go through a bunch of steps and you can improve that. That failure demand, which I like as a concept, was introduced by John Seddon, and he just changed in the large. And he says, oh, you have to change your whole organization to do this. So he starts from, maybe he does small things, he does, but he starts from a big area, circle of control and influence. That influences how you do things, what you can do. So failure demand is coined by John Seddon, a systems thinker from the UK. He worked, I think he's retired now, mainly with public sector, so the NHS, councils. So he starts with user needs, which I really like. What happens when the user's needs cannot be met? They go to frontline support, complain, and try to get their issues resolved. John also comes from a lean background, so he's inspired by the Toyota production system. And quite often, if you look at failure modes, the red things in lean, so often you see people trying to eliminate waste, but they lose sight of what's valuable. Oh yes, let's remove the waste. I come into contact with Japanese. Does anybody work for a big Japanese company by any chance? Yeah. So one thing I often hear from people who work there is, oh, our IT is just, it's not very good. But there's lots of spreadsheets. Lots of people are working on their own, trying to improve things. So reading John Seddon's work, one thing I disagree with him a lot. My favorite team size is twice as big as his. My favorite team size for development team is 2, not 1. We agree on that you should only do software when you understand the value. But when you want to do software, you do it properly. You do it with at least 2 people for the reasons we all know and love, hopefully. So in software, I often focus on software, losing sight of who we are doing it for and why. So as a developer in a microservice, some of the people in the teams, I'm customer focused. I subscribe to a bunch of Slack channels or whatever the company has, just to see, oh, there's a customer supporting. Yeah, let's subscribe to that channel. Let's see what comes in. Or last year, I was lucky someone in a neighboring team created the channel to show things that were going wrong. So we could, okay, you can see, oh, this stuff is failing. Can we do something about this? No, that's outside of our control, but we'll keep an eye on it. Maybe at some point this issue will move to somewhere where we can do something about it, and we'll do something about it. But not everybody does that. I mean, it's difficult enough writing software. So the why, product owners who don't prioritize, they also might not tell you the why we're doing things. So failure demand is work that we have to do because we did not do something or we did it badly. Question. I saw this fire truck, well, 2 fire trucks actually, passed me by this morning. Is that failure demand or is that regular demand? The fire truck goes out to a fire.
Live.
It's live. Sorry?
I think it's regular.
It's regular. Yes. Well, in Bath, where I live, I think they would consider this a failure demand. Because the main service they do, we had them visit they came to visit our house. They did an inspection, gave us a fire alarm. So the main work of a fire service is to prevent fires. If they have to go out with their fire truck, which is one of the things that they do, then the prevention has failed. It is a fact of life, but it's still failure demand. So the number of times they have to go out to extinguish a fire is might be an indicator of how well their prevention is working. The door downstairs, and I'm not sure if you noticed, I tried to enter the building this morning, and there was a door not in use. Please use main entrance. Is this failure demand? Well, no, because the hotel doesn't have to do any work for me not entering. It doesn't increase the amount of work, but the act of putting up the sign was failure demand. But after that, it's not failure demand for the hotel. They might lose my business if they do this a lot, and I come every time there's different door blocks. I'll go to another hotel. The act of putting up the sign is failure demand, I think. But the sign itself is, yeah, it's bad service. It's disappointing, but yeah, it is what it is. So yeah, it's late time in between you and the lightning talks. So let's take 2 minutes, talk to your neighbor about failure demand that you experienced. Okay, we have enough examples, I think. That's great. I'm very happy. It was interesting. It went quiet for a while and then it started to become more animated. Who would like to go first? Can I have the mic go around?
Yeah.
One of my sons is under EU sanctions. Not being an EU citizen, he's affected. And we are allowed to access some of his financial investments, but we have to go through a procedure with the investment company. And every time we do, they go into meltdown. The investment company have twice since the start of the war paid me compensation for not following their own procedure to allow us to access investment funds.
Right. Yeah. Find my own procedure. That's bad. Okay, who would like to go next?
A typical thing, as developer, when we create some features or something for users that are not easily usable, so they're in their own flow, they cannot achieve what they are supposed to, and so either file a bug or call you to try to figure out what they should be doing instead.
Yeah.
That's an example instead as a customer, like when Amazon fails to deliver me something. They declare that it's been delivered, but it's not.
Yeah.
And then I'm forced to actually talk to their chatbot, which I hate, and then manage to find a phone number to talk to a human.
Yes, it's interesting to see how different retail companies resolve these things. I cannot further comment on this because of NDAs. Anyone else?
We were thinking about any refactoring tool that you have to write yourself. It's,
That's interesting. Can you give an example of such a tool?
so I'm trying to reduce the amount of heap allocations, and in some places people have just wanted a pointer, so they've done a heap
Right.
allocation rather than a stack allocation.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to chat to you, but after this talk, I'm around the rest of the week. There are some. I have done this in the past, and there are some tools that I kind of like, but there's nothing yet where I'm like, oh yeah, this is the go-to thing to do this stuff. Yes. Anyone else? Okay. So yeah, since it's sort of drinks o'clock, it's pub quiz time. What is England's national sport?
Going through the pub.
Huh?
Going to the pub.
Going to the pub. Yeah, that's close. No, no, I think Luca was the closest. Queuing is England's national sport. If it was in the Olympics, they would have won for sure. I go to the Netherlands a lot, and the way people queue there is a lot more. Well, they don't. It's more aggressive.
But you don't play properly.
Yeah, we don't. Yes, that's right. Nobody has explained the rules in the Netherlands of queuing. So, queues. So this is sort of a bridge to bottlenecks as well. Are good to manage supply and demand. There's nothing wrong to have limited supply and manage flow. But yeah, failure queue is a need to supply support because the core service is failing. So this picture I took at a station somewhere. It's not a massive queue, but there was a staff member raising his voice and trying to keep people calm because something in the service had gone wrong. This is Brussels Midi, and Brussels is, for me, famous for putting signs up where you don't see them, or only after you've chosen the direction. I had to change tracks. I had to change over in Eurostar. I had to go to another part of the station for my next Eurostar train. There were no signs to go wherever, so I had to ask twice where to go. I've become a bit more assertive, so I ask questions. But yeah, a sign would have been nice. I'm not sure what these people had, but it was quite serious. And then you need someone to explain to people that they will get home, and that yes, there will be a train. So the people in my team went, but is that so bad? There's a Dutch marketing person who goes like, well, what do you remember more? A product or service that just worked, or a service that had a small failure but great support? And that's fair. However, I grew up in the School of Extreme Programming. And the School of Extreme Programming says, unfortunately, we do not know how far to reduce quality before it becomes intolerable. So it's better to do our best and assume we will fail anyway. I mean, I'm a perfectionist, I make mistakes. My team makes mistakes. We will make mistakes, don't worry about it. So don't let quality slip. There's one counterexample, also another Dutch firm. There's a Dutch company that makes garden furniture, and their garden furniture was so durable that they went bust because they sold to everyone in the Netherlands. And then there was no one else to buy their furniture. But the chance that that happens to your organization is extremely rare. So I wouldn't worry about it.
It's a similar story.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
Peter Summerlad, who used to come, may still come some years to ACCU. He used to run a software company in Switzerland, and they adopted TDD. Their bug count fell. Their customers stopped calling them, stopped customers stopped appreciating the service they got, they lost customer contact, and they basically went out of business.
So it does happen with software as well. So yeah, maybe every crisis is an opportunity for communication. If this happens, maybe introduce some random errors. I don't know. So, but in general, we're better to turn all knobs to 11 and just do our best. I mean, it's as Jason Gorman says, your team is not at risk of refactoring too little. It's very unlikely. I refactored too much, but it's extremely rare. So failure is not an option. It will happen anyway. So why failure demand then? Awareness helps. John Seddon believes that you need to redesign your organization. Others believe it can be done in small steps. And I believe that too. It does help if you have good HR, so you hire product owners who can set priorities and understand the value. If you raise people in being customer focused, but even as developers, we can, do small things, subscribe to the Slack channels or whatever you have. If you can, go out and see where people work, and then over time, it took us a year or half a year to fix some outages that were quite annoying to customers. Eventually, you can fix them. So the answer is no. You don't. It helps if you have a good organization and you have management that supports and knows how to hire. It really makes a big difference. But you can still do things. So a small example of failure demand that we solved is our service was, people say, oh, your service is down. We worked on a vintage service and nobody dared to touch. Your service is down. Well, no, it's not. We don't know if it's down because we can't see it in this particular infrastructure. So making people aware that no, this service might not be down, but we need to increase observability so we can see if it's down or if something else is wrong. So yeah, Slack channel that I mentioned that the colleague started, so we could see customer orders failing and then see, oh, this customer order fails. Is that related to the thing we're working on? Yes, possibly. So simple things there. I see there, so in the program, there's a whole talk about error handling. I need to prod Michael Feathers. He said he was writing a book about error handling, but I haven't seen it yet. Error handling is an unappreciated part of programming. I'm learning it by doing, but yeah, we had a system where they decided priorities, again, it was important that it's responsive. And if it returns a partially correct answer, that's fine. There is another microservice, one microservice, yeah, that's fine. Another microservice checks the answer again. Oh, I'm getting a different answer because you're not failing now. I'm getting a different answer. Ah, this is not correct. Order rejected. And if the order gets rejected, you have an unhappy customer because they don't get what they need. And they call the customer support and they go like, oh, people, can you please fix this? So we provided some error codes after convincing other teams that this was a good thing to do. So handle errors from service, so it's consistent, it's used in a consistent and transparent way. And that is a small example of something that you can do. So like I said, things that you can do, hire and promote people who care. Some things you can do bottom up. And you can do things if you can get another extreme programming favorite, collective ownership. If you can get other people in other teams to care, then you can solve this. What did make a difference, going back to Scrum failures in Utah's talk, we only do this if we can work outside the existing Scrum process if it's not good. We can't change that process easily. Or my colleagues have tried in previous years. So we have no backlog. We only work on what's most important. So we have backlog 0. And what I call opportunistic development. I have to think, like, what is that we're doing? Because at some point, another team came like, your team, we would like you to provide error coding. Yes, we've been thinking about this, but we need you to ask for this. We can do this afternoon because this is, I have a chat with my PO and my colleague, and But yes, we all find this important. We hate this failure demand. So now that you're asking for it, I'll go do this right away, stop whatever I'm doing. So we have opportunistic development, and we can do it right away before the other team goes into their planning cycle and whatever. So you can strike while the iron is hot. The other teams also had a way of doing this. They knew how they could sneak in things like this into existing user stories, but not ideal. So I realize I can do this because of the way I'm hired in companies. It might be different for you. Okay, bottlenecks. There is a detailed process, which I'll go through in a minute, but awareness beats the exact steps. If people go like, oh, you're a bottleneck, your system is slow. Do you want more capacity? You say, no. Let's just go find out if there is stuff upstream, like in our case. As far as we could observe things that were going on, we had a large number of exactly identical requests. So other systems were calling our system and asking the same question again and again. If we're a bottleneck, let's see if we can reduce the number of questions that are coming in. So we're looking for special causes of variation. This comes from Deming. Eliminate special causes of variation one by one. But reading the literature, you have to be very careful with this. This is from the Deming.org. One must manage the variation in a system in a way that improves its ability to deliver reliable value to customers. It's easy to say, oh, we don't want any variation. We want to always do the same thing. No, that's not what it's about. You want things to work consistently that should work consistently. And it depends on what context you're in. So John Seddon worked a lot in frontline services for social care and NHS, etc. It's different from manufacturing, from online sales, which I happen to be working on recently, from software development and from software deployment. Well, so the pitfalls of lean is you think, oh, it's a manufacturing thing. We just go move widgets around. Feature factory is a typical example of that. Software development is much more variable. Software deployment, you put something, go through a pipeline. It's very production-like, so you can use more of this, eliminate variation stuff. So the bottlenecks process is simple. It has 5 steps. Well, actually, it has 6 steps because it starts with 0. You think about what is the goal of the system? What are we trying to achieve? We want to understand demand. We want to understand the thing that we're doing. Actual demand, not failure demand. And what brings people here and how do they leave happy? There's a sales comedian in Dutch, unfortunately. He does a sales training thing. He gets a rote script to do in a sales call. He does exactly that, and the customer leaves and says, oh yes, the customer leaves happy. But the customers you actually see, they're not actually happy. So try to understand what makes customers happy. Step 1 is find the bottleneck. And this is, I have to think about this because this often reveals itself. People will go like, oh, your service is slow, or oh, we need 2 times as much support staff, or we need more developers. But the place where you need more developers is probably, where you think you need more developers, is probably a bottleneck. That a client asks, oh, we want to double our development team from 1,000 to 2,000. Do you think we can do that? Well, possibly, but would you want to? Maybe we should go look at some, there are probably some bottlenecks in your, yes, now there are, like I said, my favorite team size is 2. I haven't personally done this, but I have many colleagues who've done projects where, especially in automotive, that seems to be a recurring theme. Well, we've got 100 developers and they need to develop this thing and they're failing. Okay, let's get a team of 10, and they managed to do it. So if you hire the right people and you have good priorities, then you need much fewer people. So halving is a good suggestion. Thank you, Giovanni. So we exploit the bottleneck. We only do the highest priority work. I mean, if our system is a bottleneck, then we're just going to say no to anything that doesn't help make our system perform better. Let the bottleneck resource, in this case, the development team, work at a steady pace and provide high quality tools and materials. And it's funny that Giovanni mentioned that he can easily get expensive hardware, but getting a development license for a good IDE is impossible. And Pascal van Kouwenberg's blog post that I from 2013 mentions exactly the same thing. He could get more developers, but he could not get faster servers because that didn't fit in the budget allocation. So you have to be, I mean, small change works, but you need around you, you need support for, okay, we are flexible on budgets, we look what we need to buy, and we buy that, and not the thing that there's an allocation here that says we can buy this. The third step is subordinate, once you've done that, subordinate every other decision to the bottleneck. So the teams around the bottleneck, make sure they have Slack, that they're not 100% committed. I'm not sure if that came up in Juta's lists of in the list of questions. What you often see is, oh, we plan, we have a sprint. Yes, we have 70 points, and we plan 70 points on feature work, and there is no Slack. So this, as I said, the backlog 0 is an extreme way to create Slack, right? At the point where we are not a bottleneck, we have backlog 0, we change on the spot, and we do something right now. And we have Slack. So you deliberately make people work below capacity, and this is, I mean, one thing, I've been doing agile stuff for a long time, and I sell training sometimes. After Scrum became a success, people have a hard time playing trains. Oh, we need to take 3 days out of our 2-week sprint. That's horrendous. We can't possibly do that. Making people work below capacity means they have time to jump in when needed, but also they can do experiments or build their own refactoring tool if they need to. So use optional work. Optionality is really important. Both Chris Metz, who's been mentioned already, and Olaf Maassen, and Marion Tom Poppendiek have done some great writing on this. So think about, what decisions do you need? Step 4, elevate the bottleneck. Now you get to spend some money. It's great. Yeah, you spend money after having exhausted all the other options. So you want extra developers, extra support. And like I said, you need flexible budgets, because once you get to spend money, you have to take a step back to spend money on extra developers. Is it just for this problem, or is it, can we use these developers for more things? So I think a risk here is just spending to fix this particular problem, but you have to take a step back. And if you spend money, see if you can fix other problems at the same time. And step 5, you iterate, you go back to step 0. You go, okay, was this change successful? Probably, according to the theory, the bottleneck has moved. In our case, the bottleneck, with each round, the bottleneck improves, but it's still a bottleneck, so we need to go around and do more. Is that clear? Okay, I've created a very small example, Flaky tests, to illustrate. 0, what's the goal? We want to deliver fixes and features fast with good flow. Step 1, find the bottleneck. The build fails, but not because we made an error in our code. Symptoms, flaky tests. Tests unrelated to our change fail for arbitrary reasons. And the build server setup is flaky. In this case, normally I have influence on this, but in this case, I don't have, so it's outside our circle of influence. So we give feedback and hope for the best. So I'll go into the flaky tests, because there we have control and influence. We write new tests in a reliable way, as best as we can, and we use a scout rule. Whenever we are near some known flaky tests, we collect all flaky tests. We improve them when we are near. It cost us 4 months to get sort of to a point where it's a vintage system, where 90% of the test runs would pass without flaky tests. So this is like, you need perseverance, because there were a bunch of missed opportunities to make the tests reliable. And you still want to produce some value as you go. So yeah, 3, ideally, let ops team do structural improvements, which they were doing, but it was taking some time. Subordinate every other decision to the bottleneck, and do this regularly. It's then I think it's tempting to do a new big thing, but if you've got a bunch of flaky tests and are not sure about the causes, then do small improvements. Elevate the bottleneck, buy bigger virtual machines, change your CI system to something more responsive. Still quite common to use CI systems, I won't name any names, that are just slow by default. So it's, especially in a programming language I won't name, it's still quite common. Like you ask people, how long does your build take? And they go, oh, it takes 2 hours. Okay. Yeah, that's just the compilation. That's not running the tests. And it's not just, I mean, the tests are slow, the way the software is written is slow, but well, things like Jenkins aren't, for some reason, maybe Java culture, I know, I do work in Java as well. It's just slow in everything it does. It's not responsive. It won't even tell you that your build has entered the queue. A friend of mine is building a responsive CI system, so I'm biased. And then you iterate. 8 minutes left, I think. Yeah. Okay, second example, vintage service. Here we start at number 4. We hire externals, me and my colleagues. And then they start asking questions about the goal of the system, and the bottleneck sort of shifts. It's what we can't help ourselves. All of a sudden, there's a capacity for new features, even though you didn't hire the externals for developing new features, but to improve the state of the bottleneck. And then the cycle starts again. What is the goal? So start quickly. So our goal is make customers happy with widgets and make money. The goal of our team is reliably calculate stuff that I can talk about within adequate time. We find the bottleneck, system reject orders for reasons. We exploit the bottleneck. We say, no, we're not going to do anything of the other beautiful things, dear POs that you have come up with. We're just going to fix this thing and take all our high priority work while we're trying to figure out how to solve this. So this is, it looks precise, these 5 steps, but they're quite, it depends. So we got an ops person on call who had even more database experience than the person I'm working with, who could easily work for Oracle or something. So we got our own ops person on call just in case we had an outage. We attempt to duplicate problematic requests. We make better error handling, as I mentioned before, so the upstream system doesn't reject orders. Elevate the bottleneck, bigger database, as some people suggested, not needed, because our ops person could explain to us, like, oh, your database is actually doing fine, has plenty of capacity. So we invest, take time in performance measurements. So we have to build some tooling, collect requests, et cetera, so we can decide on what investment to make. And then we iterate. But the root cause of all this is setting priorities by other people. There's no ownership for our code. Priorities, as you mentioned. So that's why I was editing my slide, so I could put you in my talk. So the reason these things happen is that, oh yeah, so this is important. Oh no, this is important. But making systems work reliably is never a priority. And if no one for this system had been a long time where nobody dared to touch it, so then after you hire externals and they can work on it, it improves a bit. And then after that, some people have taken responsibility, which hopefully improves things in the future. So the post-amble, the conclusions. Failure demand can draw people into your circle of concern and influence. It's quite often when an incident happens, it's a great opportunity. That's the moment when people come together. Oh, something goes wrong. We can't sell widgets. Let's figure this thing out. And then we have some things with our team. Okay, we can do this. We get this suggestion and that suggestion. Then we do stuff. the 5+1 focusing steps can increase your circle of control and influence. If you draw people in to solve problems, if you can show that, okay, we can work in small steps, we can make things better, then the next time around, more people are likely to help you and you can influence more things. I admit I am an optimist, but this does happen sometime. Questions?